Before we start off, let's talk a little bit about design. I'm not going to be drawing out, some picture of the website. Sometimes students ask, well, Mark, how do you design things? Well, in this case here, our app is very small, and we're just going to show a few different components, like we could add products to a cart and or a wish list, and then display them on the screen. And so, here's a cool website to use as reference, just to keep in the back of your head. This is harrys.com and its current state and form. And, I just thought the idea of showing a few products here, maybe having a wish list somewhere, would be a good first website to work on. And so we're not going to design anything out. We're just going to get to it. And Bootstrap will carry us a lot of the way with some nice designs. So that's great. And so what is the first thing we want to build? Well, we know that we're going to need to be able to interface with the server and download data. So why not get that out of the way first? Let's get the behind the scenes networking code out of the way so we can actually download information. So, and also one thing to note is that you'd want to delete these comments in a live application. Just no need to have that stuff in there. So let's look at our folders here. So we've got a public folder which hosts our public files. We're not going to really mess with that at all anymore. And the important folder is the source here. And there's a few things I want to do. I want to do some cleanup here. I don't like them all being in the same thing. I want to put them into folders that are categorized by their components. So in the source folder, I'm going to do a new folder, and we're going to call this app. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show this in the Finder here. That's not what I wanted. I want to show source in the Finder. And what I want to do is I want to take app.js, the test file, and the app.css, and the logo, and put it here in the app. One thing we did not talk about is the test file. So if we look over here in the source app, there's a test file. This is for running unit tests, which is out of the scope of this course and this section here. But it is important to learn how to unit test. And what unit tests are, it's writing code that tests your code. Okay, and a short example before we move on here is you could write a function that calculates the area of some type of rectangle, right? Now, that's great. You put some numbers in it and it works. But let's say later down the line, another programmer modifies your function, like forget what it's supposed to do, and all of a sudden it's calculating the formula for a triangle. And so you're getting inconsistent results. Well, what a unit test will do is it will run every time you make a code change, you can have it run, and then it'll run some tests saying, okay, these numbers should be equal to this if I'm putting in a square or a rectangle, and it would match out. But if someone had changed the code, put something wrong in the actual function, your test would then fail. It'd say, hey, something's wrong. This is no longer working. And then the boss or you would know that somebody's modified the code and made it incorrect. And so it helps create very robust and reliable code bases. But again, it is out of the scope of what we're doing here, but we'll just leave it in just because, so we can look at it later if we want to. Okay, so we got an app folder. I'm going to create folders and separate them by components. In fact, I'm going to make this lowercase, actually. I'm going to rename it to lowercase app. I keep all my files lowercase. Well, we'll make the next ones lowercase. It's griping at me here, but I don't typically make things uppercase like this. This is what this particular project chose to do, but I find it easier when things are lowercase to work with. So we've got our app folder. Some things probably have to be relocated here. Let's see. No, logo looks good. App CSS. This is all going to be fine. It's the index.js. It's no longer available in the same directory, so all we have to do is go into the app folder and then get the app.js, like so. And this is all looking good. I'm going to change this from JavaScript to JSX so it looks better. I guess it didn't really do much at all, but it was on JavaScript there. Okay, so we've got our files moved, and what I want to do now is I want to create a folder in the source called services. We're going to call this services, and these would be things that provide services to our application, something we can use again and again. It's not a component, but it's actually some type of code or operation. It's not facing the user visually. It's behind the scenes. And in services, I'm going to create a new file, and we are going to call this http-service.js. And in this service, what we're going to do is we're going to use the code to communicate with our API. And we should probably test out our API first to make sure it's working. So I'm just opening up Postman here. This is the tool I use to make HTTP requests. It's free, available as a Google Chrome extension or a direct download. Okay, so our server's on port 3004, and we're looking for /products or product. And so if I click send, we get 3 products here. So this URL is definitely the URL we want to use. Localhost 3004 /product, and it's definitely working. So good. So what we want to do is install a package that's going to allow us to make those web requests, okay? The package is called whatwg-fetch. And I know it sounds weird, but this is a very, very popular package for making web requests on the front end, meaning like web apps like React or otherwise, you know. So we're going to open our terminal here, and we're going to make sure that we're in our project. So I'm going to open up a new tab. Turn on my node here. And so we're in Swag Shop Web. This is looking good. So we're going to do npm install --save whatwg-fetch. Okay. And this is a library that makes web requests for us. It goes on top of the standard vanilla JavaScript XML HTTP requests, and it does all the heavy lifting for us and has some nice callback functions. Okay. So we're going to install that now. Okay, great. So this is looking good. So the next thing to do is actually implement the code. So first things first, in order to use it, we need to import it. Okay, so we're going to import whatwg-fetch. Now you're probably wondering, well, why didn't I do this? Import, fetch from, from something like this, or yeah, why didn't I do something like that, or even make a variable at all? Well, the reason why is when we import this fetch module, it actually is ready to be used right away. It's just makes it publicly available, and that's just the way that they implemented it. So there's no need to store it in a variable because we'll call it directly. All right, so what we're going to do is create a class, and this is a JavaScript ES6 class. Okay, these don't exist in regular JavaScript. So if you've been programming in the regular vanilla old school JavaScript, these don't exist. This is new with the ES6, which you should be learning. Okay, we're not covering ES6 in depth, but I will explain the things as I'm doing them. So we're going to create a new class called HTTP service, like so. And a class is kind of like a function object when you would make functions with a constructor. Okay, a function constructor object. That's kind of what we're doing here. This is a reusable class. But it makes more sense versus using a function, right? It makes more sense to call it a class. So what we're going to do is we want to create a function in this class that we want to create a function in this class that fetches a list of products from the API. So let's create that function now. It's called getProducts. Okay. And if you're brand new to ES6, this probably looks really funky here. Let me just give you the equivalent of what this is. So this is an ES6 arrow function. Okay, this is how you write functions now in ES6. The equivalent would be if I did something like this. If I said var getProducts equals function, okay, that would be the exact same thing. Okay. And I know it's a little bit confusing, but this is where these are the parameters. So if I was to say param1 and param2, then that is the equivalent of saying param1 and param2. Okay, and we don't need to put any return statement on here. It's going to do the same thing whether it's return whatever. Okay, in either case you can return something. Okay, so this is the equivalent of that. All right, the parameters go into here. If there's no parameters, you can leave it like that, or if there's only one parameter, you could just say param1 without the parentheses, and it would work just as fine. But we're going to keep those that empty parentheses there, okay, because there's none. So it's just a function, all right, and you'll learn this as you do it over and over again, okay. So we want to get products, and how do we do that? Well, we need to use the fetch library. So we're going to say fetch, and fetch expects a URL to be passed in. And if you're like thinking, well, how am I supposed to know that, Mark? You can't just tell me what to do. Well, here's the npm library, npm.js, okay, whatwg-fetch, and it actually has documentations on how to on how to get it, okay, on how to use it. All right, and you can read the documentation to get the insights that you're looking for. So we know what URL it is because we just looked it up. So HTTP localhost 3004/product. Okay, that was the right URL. And Fetch uses a promise system here. And so what we're going to do is we're going to say .then. Okay, so stay with me here. So the dot then. Oh, let me change this. No, this is right. JavaScript. Do they have an ES6 built in here? Maybe we should get an ES6. It's not giving me enough colors. I don't like it. Let's get an ES6 package. Let's go to the extension manager. ES6 files. Transform. I just kind of want a linter, something that like makes it look nice. I don't want to auto compile. ES6. We'll come back to this, ladies and gentlemen. Feel free to look one up if you want. I just wanted some more colors than I'm getting, but it's fine. So this .then, okay, when Fetch does its thing, it's going to call the .then. So, this is being attached to this. We could not write code here. We could not do anything like this, okay? I just made it go down one line, Technically, it's being chained like that. Does that make sense? It's being chained to whatever Fetch is returning. But I brought it down here so we have more code space. So .then. So it's going to send us the response. This is kind of like working with an API, okay? This is the response that we're getting from the server. If it was successful or if it was a failure, okay? And how can we see what we're getting? Well, all we have to do is call the JSON on it. So let's console.log response.json. Okay, we're going to call the JSON function, which is going to take the response and convert it into JSON. Now, none of this is going to run yet because we haven't actually called it. So first things first is we need to export the class. So export default HTTP service. If you're familiar with the old way of working with JavaScript and Node, you would do module.exports equals, whatever. In our case, with ES6, it's export default, the default export for this file, and we're going to export this class. Okay? So how do we use it? Well, let's go to our app.js, and let's just import that service. So let's import, and we're going to say, what do we want to import? We're going to say HTTP service, and we're going to say from, and it's going to be, we're in the app.js, so we need to go up a directory, so .. and then services / HTTP - service. So we're going to import the class. All right, and the next thing we're going to do, that we want to do, is we just want to get it to load. Okay, so what we can do, and this is a React constructor here. We're going to go in here and create a constructor, like so. And one thing I don't like here is how my spacing is being set up. I'm going to change this from spaces to tab size, and let's see if we can get everything. It just really wants to be a pain, doesn't it? Tab size, spaces. I want these, when I indent, not to be indented so much. Tab spaces. How about if we tab size 1? Let's try that first. It is really not working with us here. There we go. Okay, constructor. And we're going to talk about this later, but we're going to pass props in here. Okay. The important thing to understand right now is that constructor is going to be the very first thing that's called when this class loads. And this is part React, part ES6. It's calling this constructor the moment that this component loads. Okay. And we're going to, it's tabs. How about 8? I think 8's a better size for tabs. 8. All right, let's try that. Oh my gosh. We'll figure this out. 8, huh? 6. Maybe 6 is the lucky number. I'm just trying to make it equal to what came with the template file, so it's it's at least better. Really back to 4? Okay, I guess 4 is what we're going to do. So in the constructor here, all we want to do is we want to call this HTTP service. Okay, we want to get it up and running. So first things first, let's actually create the service itself. So I'm going to create a variable or a constant over here. Okay, and we're going to say const, and it's going to be HTTP equals new HTTP service. Okay, we're going to create a new constant. A const means it can't be modified. It can only be accessed more or less, versus a var, which can be modified. And that's an ES6 thing as well. So we're going to create a new HTTP service. All right, and then in here we first need to call the super constructor. We'll talk about this later. All we're trying to do right now is test that it's working. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to say HTTP.get products. We're just going to call the get products function. Okay. Are you with me so far? I know there's lots going on. So let's go back to our HTTP service. So remember, get products, it's doing a fetch to this URL, and then it's waiting for the response, and we're just printing the response to the log. So what I should expect to have happen is when our app just loads, the browser, if I go to the console, it's going to print up a list of those 3 products. That's what I should see. It would mean that we've successfully loaded and we've successfully made a fetch. Okay, so this should have auto-compiled for us already. We just got to find our browser here. Here we go. Command-Alt-J. Okay, promise resolved. Okay, so I don't think I printed the right thing completely correctly, but as you can see here, we do have 3 objects, which is really cool. Do you see what we're doing here? I'm going to go over it one more time, what we're doing here. Okay, well, we do have those objects here in our console.log. And by the way, just by seeing that, you're already leaps and bounds ahead. A lot of people who are learning on their own who don't get to learn these things. And a lot of courses out there actually will teach HTML and CSS, and you make some front-end things. But you never learn how to actually connect it to a server and download data, which is crucial. It's absolutely crucial. There's no good website out there or web app that doesn't somehow talk to a server. So in our HTTP service, okay, we're doing a fetch. We're grabbing something from a server, okay, and on the response, all right, we're printing up the JSON here, okay, that we're getting back from the server. And then we're just printing it to the log, and it's working. And of course, here in our app.js, this is our base app. That's actually the base component for our entire web app here with React. And so this constructor is called when the app first loads, this component first loads, and HTTP.get products is called. And so what we've successfully done is created our own service and imported from that service and are using it, which is really cool as well too. And so I know it's a lot to take in, and we're going to call this video done. So we've got our HTTP service ready. We're going to probably make some more changes to it to better help our application. And things are looking good. We're actually communicating with the server, which is sometimes the first thing you actually want to build is the services that connect with your server, because you can't really build a true app until you have data to stuff in it. You could always put fake stuff in, but it's never reliable because it's never the real final stuff. So that's it for now. Mark Price at Devs.